everyone's faces, on most people's faces. If feel very grateful that we're able to be together in this way, in this time, when we can't be together in person. And welcome to everyone. If you, good to see folks joining us from outside of our area. Juliana, welcome back from Irvine, California, and Patricia from St. Petersburg, Florida. Betty and Joe from Charlottesville. Ruth from New Jersey. Cassie from here, but in Hilton Head, South Carolina. And see who else we have from out of Trudy from the University of Chicago. If you're in Chicago, but welcome. And Christine in Ithaca, New York. Good to see you. Good to have you with us. And Peter and Chin from Indian Rocks Beach in Florida. Good to see you. Did I say Stephanie from Naples and Florida? Melinda from Vermont. Welcome everyone. Some of you might know that in 3 days there's going to be a big event. 3 days, can you believe it? It's breathing, almost ready to breathe a big sigh of relief, and lots of changes will be coming very quickly. Getting back into the Paris Climate Agreement. Big thumbs up for that. Ending the Muslim ban, or what was remained of that, and so many other things that need to be changed, and we can look forward, hopefully, to that. And yeah, so good to be together again. Maybe just if you're new, this is a class that we've had in different forms going back up almost 20 years, but most recently in Tenleytown, DC, and now online under the auspices offered by the Center for Mindful Living, which will share the links to the center, and also under the auspices of the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, IMCW. We'll share all of those links for all the different offerings. And I've been teaching with IMCW since 2003, and teach here in our area, but also other areas too, other places. And what I wanted to do today was just to begin with some reflections, and then have a meditation. Then we'll move into some movement and some sharing, and then come back for another meditation. What I've been thinking a lot about recently, I've been talking about resources that we can bring to our practice. It goes without saying that this is a difficult, challenging, in many ways a painful time that we've been going through, both in the last year or so with the pandemic, but then the last 4 years of how much that's been going on, that's been very, very painful for many of us. Probably hazard a guess for most of us here, and looking forward to kind of a fresh beginning in a few days. But been looking at resources that we can go to when we are caught up in stress and worry and fear and difficult emotions. Being able to come back to the present, come back to our practice, come back to heart practices, compassion, loving kindness, forgiveness, and other practices. And what I wanted to talk about today and over the next few weeks is more broadly our path of practice, what it means to be on a path, on a spiritual path, where that path might be leading, what its goal is, or what the goal is for us, and the different practices that form part of our path that can be, of great support to us. I'd say particularly in these difficult times. I wonder, do you ever ask yourself, why am I here? why am I coming to this class? Why am I here? Why am I alive? But more specifically, why am I coming here? What am I coming for? Why am I meditating? What am I trying to achieve from meditating? What do I get out of it? Or what do I hope to get out of meditation? And also from practicing mindfulness in daily life, outside of formal meditation, but bringing awareness, bringing kindness, bringing compassion into our relationships, into our conversations, into our families, into our workplaces, all of that. So what am I trying to get out of, or maybe to understand as well from these practices, these teachings? And I wonder, if you step back a little bit and say, I know if I ask you, do you think of yourself as being on a spiritual path? And if so, how would you characterize, how would you describe that path for yourself? What is the desired end, that you aspire to, in practicing meditation or mindfulness, or if you connect with the Buddhist teachings or with secular teachings, what are you hoping? What is the aspiration? What would you hope to get out of it? Is your hope to be, at some stage perhaps completely free of suffering in this lifetime? Is that the aspiration? Is that the intention? Or is it perhaps to be a little less stressed, a little less caught up in anxiety or fear around what's going on? Or maybe to experience some more ease or well-being in daily life. Or maybe it's a more fulfilled life, or a more conscious or a more examined life. We might describe our aspirations in different ways. And I asked this question about kind of a sense of a path, being on a spiritual path. Not that there's any right answer to the question, obviously, and I'm not looking for a particular answer. But I do think it's an important question to kind of connect with ourselves around, what am I doing this for? Where am I wanting to get to? And obviously we've all heard, well, we shouldn't really be trying to get anywhere, because, if we're trying too hard to get anywhere, that becomes a kind of an obstacle. And that's true, in a sense. If it's all about striving, if it's all about like, I've got to get there, then we're not going to be here. We're not going to be very fully here. But it doesn't mean that there's not a value and an importance in sensing, like what am I trying to do? Because what we're trying to do and where we're trying to, what we're trying to achieve in a broad sense, I think has a big impact on, what it is that we're doing on a more day-to-day level, So reflecting on these questions about path and direction can help us be clear about what we're looking for and why we're engaging in particular practices. And they can provide you know, having some clear sense can provide a sense of energy, an aspiration, sense of direction for the practices we're engaged in. I come back to the wise words of the philosopher Yogi Berra, you know, who says, if you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. If you don't know where you're going, you'll end up someplace else. So, you know, having a sense of where we're going is important, is valuable. I think really is necessary. You know, I think for many of us, if we were to answer the question for ourselves, you know, why am I doing this? You know, what is my path? What am I seeking to get out of it? Where am I seeking to get to? We'd put ourselves probably somewhere in the spectrum that Ajahn Chah kind of delineated. You know, I quote him quite a lot. He says, "Let go a little and you'll experience a little freedom. Let go a lot, you'll experience a lot of freedom, a lot of peace. Let go completely and you'll experience complete freedom, complete peace." He said, your struggle with the world will be at an end. You know, the complete ending of the struggle with the world. And I'm going to share a little reading from a little in a bit. It's a kind of expression maybe of that kind of end of the path, or the kind of how far we might go on the path, how extensive our aspirations might be. And I wonder how many of us kind of think about our path, our intention, our aspirations, our hopes maybe, as complete ending of suffering in this life. My guess is that probably a majority of us, if we did a secret survey, or even kind of just a public one, we might say that probably the majority would have perhaps more modest goal, somewhere between letting go a little and letting go a lot. But I think for many, the idea of a complete end of suffering in this lifetime might feel lofty. I mean, but I think, you know, however we hold that, I think it's important to check in with ourselves and our aspirations. And I think one thing that we can find in the practice is that the more we practice, the more we see the benefits of practice, and the more kind of expansive perhaps our goals and our kind of hopes, our objectives can be. You know, we might start off with just, I'd like a little bit less stress in my life, but then we maybe find a little bit less stress in our lives, and we might think, oh, if I could let go of, you know, whatever it was that caught me up, you know, had me caught up in stress, maybe I could let go a little bit more. So there's a sense, you know, in which through practice, you know, there's a path of progression to deeper levels of freedom, of peace, of well-being. So wherever we might put ourselves, and I don't mean that it's only on that spectrum. We think about it, not everybody necessarily is defining, you know, their journey or their spiritual journey in relation to freedom. You know, that's very much the kind of the paradigm of the Buddha, isn't it? You know, that it's about, you know, it's about suffering and freedom from suffering. You know, suffering, or with its origins in clinging, really in ignorance of not seeing clearly how our holding on and wanting or aversion keeps us locked in suffering, and how when we see that clearly, you know, typically through practice, through meditation, through mindfulness, through awareness, that we can let go, and that there's a well-defined path, you know, with 8 elements, the Noble Eightfold Path, that is a path that's been walked before by others that we can follow, we have to walk it ourselves. We have to do it through our own experience, but it is laid out for us. It's laid out if you pay attention, if you focus your mind, if you bring wise effort, if you cultivate ethical qualities of speech, action, livelihood, if you cultivate wisdom, wise intention, wise understanding. If you follow this path, then there's it will lead to ultimately to the end of suffering if we do that in an authentic way. But it may be that we don't necessarily define our path in relation to freedom from suffering, a little, a lot, complete. We might define it in terms of growth, in terms of fulfillment, happiness, that may have overlaps with freedom, but may not be exactly the same as what kind of the Buddha was laying out for the path. And we can then look at the practices that we undertake, that we typically undertake in this path. If we think of it as broadly as the kind of the Buddhist path, or the path of mindfulness and compassion and related practices, we can look at the practices of meditation and everyday mindfulness, of going on retreats, of reading, reflection, etc. And we can ask ourselves, how much and in what way does this practice help me move towards the goal that I'm seeking? So having a sense of where I'm going, and then looking at, okay, what am I doing to help me kind of move along that path to greater freedom or greater well-being? And within the Buddhist tradition over the past 2,500 years, certain practices have been developed and undertaken with the goal of helping the practitioner alleviate suffering or move perhaps to the complete end of suffering. And what I want to look at today and over the next few weeks are 4 main areas of practice that help us, or profess to help us, move towards that goal of alleviating or ending suffering. And these 4 are meditation, daily, regular meditation. And I'm going to emphasize the kind of the regularity of it, rather than kind of just occasionally, sporadically, kind of meditating, but daily or regular meditation practice. Secondly, mindfulness in everyday life. You could talk everyday mindfulness, kind of bringing mindfulness into our families, our workplace, the different activities of the day. Not just bringing mindfulness, but also bringing the other elements of the path into our daily lives, not least the ethical qualities of speech, action, livelihood, thought, etc. So mindfulness in daily life, or the path more broadly in daily life. That's the second. And the third, I talked about a couple of weeks ago, is a deepening practice. Typically retreat practice. Where we take a longer period of time. It's still basically the same practices that we would do. We come to a class or we meditate at home, but it's a kind of a deeper dive into the practices, into the teachings. And the fourth is, I call kind of broadly, study and reflection. The kind of what we get from reading and listening to talks, and reflection, and how each of these really supports our journey on the path to freedom, on the path to whatever we're we're seeking to get to within this this framework. So I want to begin today just with some reflections about the daily or regular meditation practice. And just some reflections on meditation. And meditation is, fundamentally is a way of training our mind, or if you like, retraining our mind. It's a way of, you think of Martha Postlethwaite's poem Clearing. You think of it as a stepping out of the dense forest of our lives, stepping out of the busyness and the energy and the responsibilities and the to-dos and of daily life, and pausing to pay attention, kind of turning the spotlight inward towards our experience in body and heart and mind, and seeing where we're stuck, where we're caught up in confusion or caught up in afflictive states, and letting go, seeing the possibility of letting go by bringing awareness to our experience, really shifting out of habitual responses and seeing that we can choose more healthy, more helpful responses. But the Buddha talked about as abandoning the unskillful. Abandoning the unskillful is essentially to see is to pay attention to our experience and to see the way or the ways in which our thoughts, our actions, our speech, our way that we're acting or the way that we're engaged is actually keeping us caught up in suffering, that in some way that we're caught up in clinging. So that to turn the attention inward, to see where we're clinging and to let go, as the Four Noble Truths say. The second one, craving as the cause of suffering, and letting go of craving, letting go of clinging as the kind of the pathway out of suffering, the way to freedom of the heart. So on one side, abandoning what's unskillful, and the other main practice or body of practices more broadly is to cultivate the good, to cultivate qualities of heart and mind that lead to well-being and happiness. So how does meditation practice support us in our lives? How does it help us move, on the path to greater freedom from suffering? If we talk about that as the kind of the broad kind of trajectory of the past. I think one of the most powerful elements of regular or daily meditation practice is that it provides a kind of a bedrock for our daily lives. It provides I think of it as almost like putting down a stake, of saying, every day I will do this. Every day I will, or as many days as possible, I will pause and pay attention to my experience for 15 minutes, half an hour, however long it is, but that there is a conscious and intentional time that is set aside from, where the everyday, activities and busyness of life are put aside. And obviously, we know they don't always go away. They're often, our meditations can be filled with the worries about life and the stresses of life, etc. But our intention is that we put this kind of stake down and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be as present as I can be for my experience, for my life, and see what unfolds from doing that. See what comes from that. The poem Clearing, when we create the clearing in the dense forest of our lives, and then waiting patiently until the song that is yours alone to sing falls into your open cupped hands, and that sense of the song coming out of the stillness, coming out of the presence of being present. It may not always be the case. Sometimes we may just stay caught up in kind of the wheel, the wheel of suffering, the stress, worry, fear, anxiety, all of that. But with enough intention and enough commitment and presence, then things can begin to fall away. The clinging can begin to fall away, and we can find some peace, perhaps some space in the clearing, and then go back into our lives with a different kind of sensibility, a different sensitivity, a different quality of heart and mind. So I think one of the most important elements of meditation is to really be that kind of bedrock. I think of it as a habit, meditation as a habit like anything else, and an extremely helpful habit of practice that can really inform and impact our daily life. How many of us have had the experience of, and we have a regular meditation practice, and for some reason we get so caught up in things, we don't meditate for 3 or 4 days or something, and that we begin to notice, I'm less patient with my kids, or I'm much more reactive with my colleagues at work, or certainly I've found that, if for some reason I don't meditate for a couple of days, and it rarely happens now, but because it's just become a habit. And once something becomes a habit, it becomes a lot easier. It's like riding a bicycle. Once you get the momentum, then it's like the momentum kind of pulls you along. And these wonderful brains that we've inherited from millions of years of evolution, when we develop healthy habits, we tend to stick with them. I've shared about going out on a walk and listening to a talk, and I've done that. I'm coming up about 300 days of doing that. I don't think I've missed a day, and it's just not an issue now to do that, because it's just become habitual. My brain just, okay, I go out for my walk, I put on my the talk, and I listen to a talk, and I listen to a talk. But in order to get there, the first couple of weeks, it needed to be much more intentional. And it's the same really with a formal practice. Maybe there's quite a few folks here who kind of have more of a sporadic practice. It's like, I can never seem to get regular enough in my practice. And I just want to, encourage you to keep on just, make it as easy as you can to do it. Do it the same time every day if possible. Do the same place every day if possible. And then when the brain has these cues, if there's things that you can do to remind yourself, put an alarm on, to say, oh yeah, it's meditation time now. Everything that we can do to make it easy for us to do the healthy things in our life. And one of the healthiest things we can do, in my view, is meditation. Then it becomes much easier. After a while, it becomes a natural thing to do. Now, we still have to deal with, what comes up, the difficult person that we're dealing with in meditation, which is often ourselves. And it doesn't mean it's easy. But once we get into the rhythm, then then it becomes less of a challenge, less of a chore to actually do it. So, very much encourage you, if you're, are still kind of working at doing that, of the regularity of the doing it on a daily basis. And feel free to, share any wisdom or any insights, any tips for others, things that have worked for you. Can use the chat in that way if you'd like to do that. So a few other things about the practice of meditation and the way it supports us. That the teacher I've been listening a lot to in the last, most of the last year, Rob Beyer, speaks about how our practice, particularly practices of calming the mind and calming the body and calming the heart, practices of concentration, of samadhi is the word in Sanskrit, Pali languages. He speaks about these practices creating or providing a deep reservoir of well-being, that then can support us and give us strength, in difficult times. So if we don't have the practices that allow us to go deep and really realize deeper states of calm and well-being, then when we get caught up in stress and fear in our lives, we will tend to think that the stress and the fear is just like, this is the way, this is the way things are, this is the way my life is. But if, on the other hand, we've realized and been able to touch into real states of peace, well-being, a really calm, settled mind, and the ease and well-being that comes with that, when the difficulties do arise, we're much more able to see, okay, things are hard right now, but I know that these states are available to me, that I can find my way back there. And that's what one of the things that meditation can help us to do. Sure, different chemicals can help as well at times, but don't tend to bring the same lasting results that meditation does. So this kind of this deep reservoir of well-being that can be accessible to us and available to us. Meditation can also, it's a really good barometer of how we're doing. When we do pause and just check in, and we notice, like, our body's really tight or tense, or we're caught up in a lot of thinking and worrying and fear, etc., that we can, like, just by turning the attention inward, we can say, oh, I'm noticing that, I can see that, and in seeing that we can kind of invite ourselves to relax, to settle. Meditation can also, as I mentioned, in terms of those two elements, abandon the unskillful and cultivate the good, it can help us develop and deepen qualities that enhance our life and help us live with greater ease, with greater well-being. Qualities like loving kindness and compassion, equanimity, joy, concentration. So in a broader way, we can ask, what does meditation help us to do, and what does it support us in doing? In a sense, of the main thing it helps us to do is to let go of clinging, to let us see where we're clinging, and to let go, to see that we don't have to keep reinforcing those thoughts and actions that keep us locked in that that cycle of clinging. So letting go of clinging and and opening us to greater freedom of the heart. meditation can help us see through the illusion of a separate self. Particularly when we reflect on impermanence, we can see, we can let go of that sense of this I that has to be protected and fed and defended. And we can see, this I, the kind of problematical I is actually an illusion. It's not, there isn't a solid, permanent I. There's rather, these changing conditions, that we can identify as I when we get caught up in clinging, but when we see clearly, we can let go. So that seeing through the illusion of a separate self also brings greater freedom. Seeing the impermanence of all things, that everything is changing, that too brings freedom. And helping us again to cultivate states of joy and peace that lead to freedom, to insight that's freeing, that frees the heart. So there's a variety of forms and kinds of meditation. We give a lot of attention to, the central practice of mindfulness. Just that the practice of bringing awareness to our experience, and bringing awareness, the four foundations of mindfulness, of body, of feeling tone of experience, of emotions and mind states, and of phenomena in general. So the meditation, mindfulness meditations, we also cultivate heart practices, equanimity, loving kindness, compassion, forgiveness, joy. We can cultivate practices of calming the mind, concentrating, focusing the mind. And in each of these kinds of practices and the specific practices we do, really the question to ask ourselves is, why am I doing this? And is it serving? Is it leading to well-being? Is it leading to greater well-being, greater happiness? And to cultivate that awareness that allows us to see, yes, this is serving well-being, rather than this is keeping me caught up in stress, in suffering, in worry. So the more we practice, the more we develop that capacity for knowing, oh yeah, this is helpful, this is serving me. So we can ask ourselves, what qualities do I want to develop through meditation? And what's calling for attention? Where am I stuck? What am I, what's asking to be let go of? I think we'll move into a meditation in a moment. I just want to read a little bit from Eckhart Tolle's introduction to his very well-known book, The Power of Now. And this speaks, I think, more to what the end of the path, what the goal of the path can be. And I think I find it inspiring, in pointing to the depth of freedom that's available, even when we're caught up in really painful, difficult mind states, and to see, to recognize that the difference between being caught up in deep suffering and the availability of deep freedom, can be a hair's breadth difference. You know, we tend to think of it in our minds as like, if I'm really caught up in suffering, I'm really, you know, caught up in afflictive mind states, it must be a million miles from being free, from being, you know, experiencing deep peace and deep freedom. But in fact, you know, it can be just a hair's breadth difference. It can be just a clear seeing that turns things upside down. So I want to just read this introduction that he shares. It's called The Origin of This Book, Introduction, The Origin of This Book. So he begins, I have little use for the past and rarely think about it. However, I would briefly like to tell you how I came to be a spiritual teacher and how this book came into existence. Until my 30th year, I lived in a state of almost continuous anxiety, interspersed with periods of suicidal depression. It feels now as if I'm talking about some past lifetime or somebody else's life. One night, not long after my 29th birthday, I woke up in the early hours with a feeling of absolute dread. I'd woken up with such a feeling many times before, but this time it was more intense than it had ever been. The silence of the night, the vague outlines of the furniture in the dark room, the distant noise of a passing train, everything felt so alien, so hostile, and so utterly meaningless that it created in me a deep loathing of the world. The most loathsome thing of all, however, was my own existence. What was the point in continuing to live with this burden of misery? Why carry on with this continuous struggle? I could feel that a deep longing for annihilation, for non-existence, was now becoming much stronger than the instinctive desire to continue to live. I cannot live with myself any longer. This was the thought that kept repeating itself in my mind. Then suddenly I became aware of what a peculiar thought it was. Am I one or two? If I cannot live with myself, there must be two of me, the I and the self, that I cannot live with. Maybe, I thought, only one of them is real. I was so stunned by this strange realization that my mind stopped. I was fully conscious, but there were no more thoughts. Then I felt drawn into what seemed like a vortex of energy. It was a slow movement at first and then accelerated. I was gripped by an intense fear and my body started to shake. I heard the words, resist nothing, as if spoken inside my chest. I could feel myself being sucked into a void. It felt as if the void was inside myself rather than outside. Suddenly there was no more fear, and I let myself fall into that void. I have no recollection of what happened after that. I was awakened by the chirping of a bird outside the window. I'd never heard such a sound before. My eyes were still closed, and I saw the image of a precious diamond. Yes, if a diamond could make a sound, this is what it would be like. I opened my eyes. The first light of dawn was filtering through the curtains. Without any thought I knew that there is infinitely more to light than we realize. That soft luminosity filtering through the curtains was love itself. Tears came into my eyes. I got up and walked around the room. I recognized the room, and yet I knew that I'd never truly seen it before. Everything was fresh and pristine, as if it had just come into existence. I picked up things, a pencil, an empty bottle, marveling at the beauty and aliveness of it all. That day I walked around the city in utter amazement at the miracle of life on earth, as if I had just been born into this world. For the next 5 months, I lived in a state of uninterrupted, deep peace and bliss. After that, it diminished somewhat in intensity, or perhaps it just seemed to because it became my natural state. I could still function in the world, although I realized that nothing I ever did could possibly add anything to what I already had. I knew, of course, that something profoundly significant had happened to me, but I didn't understand it at all. It wasn't until several years later, after I'd read spiritual texts and spent time with spiritual teachers, that I realized that what everybody was looking for had already happened to me. I understood that the intense pressure of suffering that night must have forced my consciousness to withdraw from its identification with the unhappy and deeply fearful self, which is ultimately a fiction of the mind. This withdrawal must have been so complete that this false, suffering self immediately collapsed, just as if a plug had been pulled out of an inflatable toy. What was left then was my true nature as the ever-present I am, consciousness in its pure state prior to identification with form. Later, I also learned to go into that inner timeless and deathless realm that I had originally perceived as a void and remain fully conscious. I dwelt in states of such indescribable bliss and sacredness that even the original experience I just described pales in comparison. A time came when for a while I was left with nothing on the physical plane. I had no relationships, no job, no home, no socially defined identity. I spent almost 2 years sitting on park benches in a state of the most intense joy. But even the most beautiful experiences come and go. More fundamental, perhaps, than any experience is the undercurrent of peace that has never left me since then. Sometimes it's very strong, almost palpable, and others can feel it too. At other times, it is somewhere in the background, like a distant melody. Later, people would occasionally come up to me and say, "I want what you have. Can you give it to me or show me how to get it?" And I would say, "You have it already. You just can't feel it because your mind is making too much noise." That answer later grew into the book that you are holding in your hands. Before I knew it, I had an external identity again. I had become a spiritual teacher. So I wanted to share Eckhart Tolle's introduction because I find it inspiring. There's many other experiences of awakening that are shared, some coming through the more directly through the meditation experience, others through breakthroughs like that can come often out of that sense of being in a very, very contracted place and being able to kind of that sudden breaking through. But I think these experiences, reading about them, reflecting on them, can be, I think, an inspiration to us, to encourage us to keep keep deepening the search, deepening the practice, so that we can connect with the deepest possible freedom that is available to us in our lives, wherever we define that goal for ourselves. So let's move into a short meditation to continue our time together. So I invite you to find a comfortable, relaxed posture. You could close your eyes and let your attention come inward if that's comfortable for you. Inviting the shoulders to relax, let the chest be open, letting your hands rest comfortably in your lap or on your knees or thighs. You might connect with your breathing and invite some deeper breaths, nice deep full in breath. filling the chest, filling the lungs, and releasing, letting go on the out breath. Breathing in, calming the body. Breathing out, calming the mind. And in your own time, finding your way back, just letting the breath be, come back to its natural rhythm. Breathing in and breathing out. And opening to what's present for you right now in the body and in the heart, in the mind. Bringing a receptive, kind attention to what's present for you right now. Whatever's here, whatever's predominant in your experience, just make space for it. Welcome the guests. As Rumi says in his poem, even if they're a crowd of sorrows who sweep your house empty of its furniture, still treat each guest honorably. He may be clearing you out for some new delight. How is it to meet what's here right now with acceptance, with kindness, without judgment? You might ask yourself, is anything in the way of being completely at peace right now? And if something comes up, a worry about the future or fear about some situation or an unpleasant feeling, see if you can be at peace with this too. Peace is this moment without judgment, this moment in the heart space, where everything that is welcome. Peace is this moment without judgment. This moment in the heart space where everything that is welcome. If everything can be allowed, then nothing really needs to be a problem. Just what this moment is bringing. We can make space for it. Make space for this with kindness, with acceptance. Everything can come and go in its own time. Letting your attention rest on the experience of the breath, if that's helpful to you. Coming back when the mind goes off into thought and we notice the mind has gone, just to come back again, kindly, gently. Holding what is present with kindness, making space for what's here. This is from Mary Oliver, White Heron Rises Over Black Water. I wonder what it is that I will accomplish today, if anything can be called that marvelous word. It won't be my kind of work, which is only putting words on a page, the pencil haltingly calling up the light of the world, yet nothing appearing on paper, half as bright as the mockingbird's verbal hilarity in the still unleafed shrub in the churchyard, or the white heron rising over the swamp and the darkness, his yellow eyes and broad wings wearing the light of the world in the light of the world. Ah, yes, I see him. He is exactly the poem I wanted to write. So Emily, if you're ready, we'll have some movement. Thank you.
Yes. Let me invite everyone to stand up, find your feet, and just sway from side to side. And then open your arms up, twisting into the space around you. And then slow down, finding the air as waves with your hands. And softly turn your palms out and reach up, lengthening your arms up, and then gather the energy of the sky, the clouds, and the light, and bring that to your heart. And then gather the energy of this group, the kindness, the compassion, bringing that to your heart. And then gather the energy of the earth, that which provides so much abundance, and bring that to your heart. Let's come into Cactus Arms for just a moment and drop your hands down, rising up and down and rise up. And then clasp your hands behind your waist and lengthen your arms away from your body with an inhale and release with an exhale. Again, lengthen with the inhale and release your arms, shake them out and move your shoulders, swimming in your own fashion, and then swim the other way. And then reaching up one more time, extending up, grasp your left wrist in your right hand. Breathe in, and exhale, tilt to the right, lengthening out your hip through your fingertips. And inhale up, switch hands, tilting to the other side, lengthening through your body. And then the last movement after you float your arms down. Place your hands above your knees. Inhaling, lift your head and your chest up. And exhale, lower to your optimal place. Allowing your head to drop down. Your shoulders to drop down. Your hands to be wherever they can be, lengthening downward, dropping your chin to your chest. Breathing here. And then placing your hands above your knees. Press on your feet and raise your torso. Place your hands at heart center and release to the sky. Release to the world and to the earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Emily. Lovely. So good to get into the body after a chunk of time sitting. So thank everyone as well. Thank you, Emily, and thank everyone for your sharing in the chat. Please feel free if you'd like to share anything of your experience today, of anything that's coming up for you. What I'd like to do, just given the time today, would be to just stay in the full group, and maybe have a couple of folks share if you'd like, have any question, or if you'd like to share something, and then we'll go into a meditation. So maybe time for 2 or 3 people to share. And folks have shared some questions in the chat. I'll just put in, maybe folks have already responded. The book I was sharing was Eckhart Tolle's Power of Now, and the poem I read from Mary Oliver was called White Heron Rises Over Blackwater, Mary Oliver. And and Rob Burbea, I think somebody has written that down, but I'll make sure I write it down, was the teacher that I spoke about. So let me see. We have any any hands? Anyone who'd like to looking and how's everyone doing? Good. Julie, please feel free.
I just wanted to say that being in DC now is a strange mix of hope and feeling under siege, but I just hold everybody in my hearts, and it's good to have both and not just the one, to have it all, the good with the bad.
Thank you, Julie. I think probably that you speak for many of us, that 3 more days, and things, I think we can, things will change in many ways, in very positive ways. I mean, the idea of working, seriously and in a committed way on racial justice, social and economic justice, climate change, after 4 years when, all of that has been, tossed to one side or gone in completely the opposite direction. I just feel that I think it's kind of hard to allow ourselves to open fully before we're kind of fully there, but there's a sense of, certainly I feel that we got a reprieve from something that might have, that would have been very, very dark, and I think we hopefully will learn the lessons of these last 4 years to make sure that nothing like it ever happens again. That would be my hope. So thank you, Julie. And what I'd like us to do is we can in a moment move into a meditation, and I kind of what I have in my mind and my heart right now is a wish for peace for all of us, that we move towards greater peace and understanding and away from the division and the cruelty and the dishonesty that have been so much a characteristic of these recent years. So let's take some time now to meditate again. Diane is holding your breath for 3 more days. Maybe take a few breaths in that time, might be helpful, but I hear what you're saying. So again, let yourself come into a comfortable posture. Taking your seat, you can think of the archetype of the Buddha sitting under the tree of awakening. A sense of dignity, receptive, peaceful. Letting yourself drop down out of the head, down into the body. Feel the contact with the surface beneath you. Feel the sensations of the body breathing. Breathing in, breathing out. Letting the breath help you settle and relax into being here. Calming the body, calming the mind. You could invite a smile, help relax the body and the mind, if that's helpful. Letting the smile come down into the heart, into the body. How is it to meet the world with the expression, the attitude of a smile? Making space for whatever is present for you right now. How is it to say yes to whatever is here? If you experience resistance, something unpleasant you want to push away, see if you can meet your resistance with kindness, with acceptance, making space for that too. If it's helpful, letting the breath be a focus for your attention, an anchor for your attention. Breathing in and breathing out. You might see if you could experience a sense of peace or pleasant feelings in the breath, in the breathing. Maybe the cool air at the nostrils, or the feeling of relief or release as you breathe out. You could let your attention rest at that place where the breath feels pleasant, relaxing. And enjoy the feeling. The more we enjoy the breath, the more the mind kind of wants to come back. Experience the calm, the peace of the joy. As you breathe in, you might send a wish of peace to yourself, a wish of peace, of well-being, of ease. As you breathe in, and as you breathe out, you could send a wish of peace to the world at large, to the country, or to specific people or groups. Breathing in peace for yourself. Breathing out peace for the world, for others. Perhaps for everyone here today, together. Wishing everyone well. As you breathe out, you might breathe out your hope for the country, for the world, as we move towards this new period. What's your deepest wish? Perhaps your wish for yourself, wish more broadly for the country, for the world. Feeling us here all together in this intentional space, this being together, the commitment to waking up, to living more wisely, more kindly, helping ease suffering. Letting our wishes go outward to our suffering world. To all beings, near and far, all ages and races and beliefs, genders, abilities. As the Dalai Lama often says, we all want to be happy, but often we go about it in ways that actually create suffering for ourselves and others. So I wish that all beings find a way out of suffering, to realize their true nature, their true goodness. I share Diane Ackerman's poem, School Prayer. In the name of the daybreak and the eyelids of morning and the wayfaring moon and the night when it departs, I swear I will not dishonor my soul with hatred, but offer myself humbly as a guardian of nature, as a healer of misery, as a messenger of wonder, as an architect of peace. In the name of the sun and its mirrors, and the day that embraces it, and the cloud veils drawn over it, and the uttermost night, and the male and the female, and the plants bursting with seed, and the crowning seasons of the firefly and the apple. I will honor all life, wherever and in whatever form it may dwell, on earth my home, and in the mansions of the stars.